We're back. Hello, everybody. Michael Ware with the Iowa Firearms Coalition. I have with me Jimmy Lawrence, special guest today with Lawrence Taxidermy. In full disclosure, everybody, I have known Jimmy for a long time. I'm really glad to have you on today. Thank you for coming.
I'm glad to be here.
Fantastic. So let's get started. So what is Lawrence Taxidermy? Tell me a little bit about it.
So Lawrence Taxidermy is my taxidermy business that I operate down here in Southwest Iowa. Although my location is in Southwest Iowa, 90% of my work is actually out of state. So it's kind of cool.
Okay, so that was the first thing that I was going to ask. I'm glad you walked right into that. Does location matter really for what you're doing and the customers you serve?
I sure don't think so. With technology the way it is, social media and the like, it's really easy to pretty much have a business like mine anywhere. Even in remote Alaska, you could get stuff. So for me, I'm very fortunate to be able to live where I grew up, as you know, very rural, very small community, and still be able to do stuff for people all over the United States, Canada, Japan. It's very nice to be able to do that and still stay, here, very small, very private, and very secluded. So I enjoy that.
Japan, is that what you said?
Yep. Wow, I sent a bass to Japan. Yep.
So, okay. So what comes from Japan? I'm curious.
So bass fishing is pretty much big everywhere that there are bass. It's just, contagious. Every place that has largemouth seems to be just caught by the fever, literally. So Japan is where the current world record largemouth is from. And just bass fishing is huge billion-dollar business over there. Yep. So I do a lot of largemouths, and they seem to get a lot of traction on social media, and that's how I got contacted to do some work from overseas. So that was kind of cool.
Fantastic. That's very cool. So how'd you get your start? Tell us.
So when I was 15, I was fishing a farm pond and I caught an 8.5-pound bass, and I saved it, and I begged my mom to get it mounted, and she finally, caved and let me do it. And when I got that back, I thought, how cool would that be to be able to just mount one of everything I ever caught or killed, etc. And, it would all be free because I would do it all, not realizing everything costs lots and lots of money. But so that's kind of got, how I got my foot in the door. And then I have been very fortunate to have been mentored and some of the best friendships I've ever had with some of the nation's best taxidermists in their, proficient fields, whether it be birds, mammals, life-size, fish, or some of them are just, good all-around taxidermists. I'm very fortunate to be able to call some of those people my friends, and then a lot of trial and error, mostly error on my part, but, that's how I learn. So
yeah, don't we all? Yes, I understand. So you started out wanting to do this for yourself, and then so what happened next? You found out that you were good at it, bad at it, something you want to do, or what?
I just found that I had a kind of a knack for fish, especially. Like I wasn't as great as the others at different aspects like game heads and stuff like that, and birds. Birds never did take hold for me. I just can't. Somewhere between my head and my hands, something gets lost. Like I can see it, I can see other people do it, and I know it in my head, I just can't do it here. With fish, it's almost like muscle memory to me. I can they fall together. I can figure them out easier, faster, better. So I was just like a duck to water or a fish to water in this case. That's what I was drawn to, and that's what I excelled at. But I have found if I start, showing more interest in actually focusing, if you break it down, it's just all details. So whether it's a bird, a fish, doesn't matter what it is, you break it down into details and try to focus on that. But man, I sure got good at it. And then I did a couple for friends, and then I had all kinds of friends that I didn't even know I had because I was a taxidermist,
Yeah.
And as I'm sure you did in the firearm business, you probably had friends you didn't even know you were friends with. So I started doing some of those, and before you knew it, I was doing it, and I really enjoyed the aspect of being self-employed and around nature all the time. Literally, my business is every day working on something from nature, which I really love. So
an average day is do what you enjoy, set it down for a minute, grab the rifle and pop out back and scrap some coyotes, and then what? I mean, how does it work?
Yep, literally. So I'm very fortunate to live on an acreage, and I happen to have a great view of several ditches and draws right from my shop front door. So whether I'm going back and forth from the house to check on something, or even just getting water from the hydrant, I'm always keeping an eye out for coyotes. Always. And sure enough, as you well know, like I'll spot one and be able to shoot it right from the yard. And And it's just kind of funny. Like I first wanted to keep tally marks of all the coyotes that I killed from the yard, and then I just gave up after a while because it's just, you know, it's kind of funny, but it's nice, and I get to do that, and nobody can tell me I can't. So
yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong with my memory. Was it your boy who snagged a what was it, a skunk or something the other day with your rifle, or what?
yep, he did. So we were actually coyote hunting, but we went to set up the blinds for future deer hunting. While we were out there, we set out the coyote call, but we'd made all kinds of noise, and we'd had snacks and so on and so forth. So needless to say, we didn't see coyotes. But
Yeah.
walking out, we were about halfway back to the truck, and this big male skunk was just scrounging along the ditch. And he looks at me and he goes, "Can I shoot it, Dad?" And I said, if you want to, if you're comfortable with it, yeah, I guess go ahead. That's they're really bad nest predators. The quail and turkeys and things will thank you for it later. And what was really nice about that rifle was he literally could shoulder it. I just simply just rested, the forearm of the rifle just for balance issues because he's at the time 8. But with that can on the end of it, he just effortlessly did no recoil. He was standing. And he chambered another one. And I said, when you get steady, go ahead and put another one in it. And he did. And I mean, it was just, he was so excited. He was so happy. And he didn't have to worry about, a real loud, scary bang. He didn't have to worry about the recoil. And that was super nice for me. So, and it didn't spray, luckily enough. We were able to harvest the skull, and no smell was to be had. So we got lucky.
I remember I fancied myself a pretty good rifleman, and there was a skunk gnawing around on something that had fallen off when my uncle and my brother and I had been carving up deer down in Missouri a number of years ago. And the barn was open, the doors were open, whatever else. And my uncle handed me his 17 HMR and said, "You're a pretty good shot. Can you hit this thing in the head?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, of course." So he's like, "You're sure, right?" He said, "This thing's inside of my barn, right?" And I'm like, "Well, of course I can."
Oh, yeah.
So I drew down and I took aim and I cracked Mr. Skunk, and he did. And then my uncle's like, "You did it. You did it." I'm like, "Well, of course I did." And about that time, this thing reared back and just spewed everywhere. And so for the next month and a half, I can remember, I mean, he would call me up from time to time. He's like, "Hey, I'm in my barn and it smells like the wrong end of a skunk." I'm like, "Dude, I'm sorry." But I thought I could pull it off, but I know how that goes. But anyway, I strayed, chased a rabbit there, so to speak. So what's the smallest thing you've ever done, and what's the largest? I want to know.
Sure. So the smallest would probably, just strictly going off of like a fish perspective, was I've molded several different small bait fish and like minnows. So I've literally molded, minnows, and I've went from doing stuff like that to doing 13-foot like marlin.
Wow.
So in fish, that's pretty good. I've worked on other bigger fish, but as far as just solo projects, I've done everything from minnows to marlin in very literal fashion. So that's kind of cool.
So have you done any of the big game stuff, or is it mostly
Yep.
only?
Yep. So as far as big game goes, I've been fortunate to do a little bit of everything, from clients to friends and things that I've met over the years. Right now, as a matter of fact, right now in the shop, I've got a mouflon and an ibex from Spain. There's several whitetails from different states. There's a bear from Alaska, a small black bear from Alaska in here. And then I've got a small African shipment to do, and then a Coues deer from Mexico to do. So I have done a few odds and ends, and a few years ago I was able to do just shy of 10-foot Kodiak grizzly life size, which was really, really cool. And I've done bison and everything in between, but I've done a little bit of everything, so that was kind of neat.
Fantastic. Okay, so what's the largest animal that you've ever done?
Would have to be that Kodiak bear, I think. Just shy of 10 feet would probably be the largest. I've done bison, which, on the hoof would probably obviously be larger. But I've done some big bull bison. I've done red stag that are, very large elk. Coworker of mine, we did a PBR bucking bull shoulder mount. We worked on that together. Life-size elk, stuff like that. But yeah. Kind of nice, kind of neat to do that. And like I said, that Kodiak bear, we had it here in the shop, and I mounted it in the wintertime and stuff, and we shampooed it and stuff inside the shop. And I've got several pictures of the process, but That's kind of neat for the kids to be able to see all these kind of things that are hunted from literally all over the world. My son Maxon and Grant and Wyatt, they all three of my boys have seen all kinds of animals from all over the world and never left and never had to leave the house. And I think that's amazing. Yeah.
You know, you probably, I don't know if it's something you thought about when you get started in this, but who knew that you need 10-foot ceilings or 12-foot ceilings in your shop to do this kind of stuff? I mean, a standing Kodiak, that's a big animal. I mean, that takes a lot of room.
It does. It sure does. Yep, it does. And I haven't worked on anything like super big, but I have several friends that have done like giraffes and several different things where they literally have to mount it, horizontally instead of vertically because they simply don't have the ceiling room. So, yeah, it's very interesting what space you can occupy, whether you want to or not. So,
yeah. I remember years ago, I mean, we were working on, well, we were in a non-disclosure agreement then. We could talk a little bit about it now, but we were working on some refurbished tanks, and it dawned on me at one point. I just assumed that everything that I would ever do would be on a mill or a lathe or on a bench top or maybe in front of a welder or some sort of bench, you know what I mean? And everything that would come and go would be either people would carry in or they would come and go in cardboard boxes from the UPS man, right? I never thought that there would be a truck, a low boy that would roll up and this thing would come off of it, So, I mean, sometimes you don't bargain for that kind of thing when you enter into this kind of business.
Yeah.
In the Second Amendment outdoor area. I mean, you don't really know. So I can see how that would change. I mean, the first time that what would you call it? An LTL truck pulls up to your place because you've got to put this monster crate on this thing because this isn't going UPS anymore. Your perspective changes, which I think is pretty cool.
It is. It's very cool. It's very neat. Yep. I really enjoy it.
Okay. So tell me, I mean, we primarily touch on Second Amendment things, hunting, legislation, self-defense, situational awareness, all those kinds of things. So tell me how the Second Amendment has impacted your business and what importance it has for you and what you do.
Well, just the whole Second Amendment and hunting in general, as far as taxidermy as a whole, is just hand in hand. I mean, they're huge. You can't have obviously one without the other, death of natural causes and so on and so forth. But without one, you almost can't have the other as far as a nationwide thing. So for me, it's really important for people to be able to go out and exercise these rights because I've done third generation work. I've done deer heads for grandpa, for dad, for son, and I've not done it nearly as long as a lot of my peers have. So there's a rich history involved with hunting that is you can literally watch it being passed down from generation to generation and hunter safety. And all these things are huge. Like before any of my boys ever touched an actual gun, we did the BB gun thing. We did the gun safety thing. We worked our way up. We make sure that everybody, every single time is safe. We know that this is our right to do this. We enjoy it. We enjoy every aspect of it from, the gun safety, learning how everything works, to the harvesting of the animals, to the processing of the game, to the cleaning of the firearms afterwards. All these things were passed down to my dad from his family, and his parents were passed down to me or passed down to them. Yeah. And that's huge for me. That's huge for me. It's so important. Otherwise it just really limits you. It just paints you into a real tight box, I think, and it doesn't allow you to expand nearly as much.
You're probably right about all that. Sometimes I don't think about it in that vein, and I probably should more often. I did notice you said that you cleaned your guns. I should probably start doing that one of these days.
I read somewhere that was important.
I'm terrible at that. I got to tell you, I ride my stuff hard and put it away wet, and maybe that's what gunsmiths do. It's kind of the, you never want to buy a used car from a mechanic, one of those things,
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying you couldn't buy a used firearm from me, but the truth of the matter is, I tend to go out and beat my stuff up pretty hard and not get too worried about it. So maybe I should clean a little bit about it.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the hardest thing that you've ever done, and what was the easiest?
That's tough. That's a tough one. I don't know that anything's necessarily easy. I'm very comfortable painting a largemouth now. Like I can just paint them almost in my sleep. So I would say that's the closest as easy comes to me. So that's just something I'm very comfortable and proficient with. So that would be the easiest, I think, probably. The hardest, I think life-size mammals for me, especially smaller ones, cats in general. Cats are very, very hard. They're hard for anybody. And I think for me, just getting facial features right on a cat has probably been very hard, like the most nerve-wracking thing for me, probably. That's why I don't do very many cats. So.
Well, know yourself, right? I mean, and there's things that craftsmen really look forward to doing, and other they're like, yeah, I'll do it, but it's not my favorite thing. And sometimes I don't do it, but sometimes I find myself saying no from time to time. I'm like, no, thank you. I know somebody who would probably do this for you and being more enthusiastic about it. I'll give you this person's number.
Yep. And I do that quite a little bit, actually. I sure do. Yep. I'll do that with different things, especially mammals and big game and stuff like that. For one, like I kind of transitioned when I moved here to pretty much doing roughly, fish only, with the exception of a few, good customers and friends and things. So I got rid of a lot of my big game, processing things for myself. So I'm not really set up to do a lot in a high volume. So for me, it just works out better, to say no to some of that other stuff. And now sometimes I can't be persuaded, or I can be persuaded, whether, my cousin, I wasn't going to do any more bison. And my cousin sweet talked me with a bunch of bison burger and roasts and things along with, everything else. So I can be swayed with trips or guns or freezer filling meat. I've got 3 boys that eat more food than you can fathom.
Yeah.
I'm sure you and Paul, probably ate your fair share when you were growing up. And
yeah,
we've got a high schooler, a middle schooler, and a third grader, and they're all growing. And my goodness, we never have any food for anything. So
yeah, you can bribe the local gunsmith with yummy treats. No
exactly. Yeah, I'm big into the barter.
My I've got customers that show up routinely with snack sticks or maybe a bottle of bourbon or something like that, whatever it may be, and I'm like,
yeah.
Come on in.
Yeah.
I'll figure out a way to get this done. That's no problem.
Yeah, let's take another look at that. Let's really get into this.
I answered too quickly. Come on in.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That's kind of how it works. And like you say, the barter system is alive and well, especially on that level. That's very good stuff. I had one other question I was going to ask you real quick. I did want to ask you, so what's the most gratifying thing that you actually end up doing in a day or a week's time? I'm curious about that.
Expand on that specifically.
Well, okay, so you may not have known that you wanted to do this, or you may not have known that this is how you would feel at the end of a project or thing. So, but I'm finding, at the end of the day, I'm very happy about this. I'm very happy about this thing, or whether it's where I live and I can take my boys outside, or whether it's the job that I do that I enjoy or whatever. I mean, I'm curious what you find gratifying or fulfilling with the choice of work that you're doing or the time and the place that you are.
Yeah, I can touch on a little bit of all of that. For me, it's very satisfying to be able to live and work from home or from where I live and be able to have the freedom to literally go do, shoot a coyote or, just go walk and clear my head. I go for walks even in the wintertime. So I'm very fortunate to live here and be able to do that. There's people that have never in their entire lives been able to walk through 160 acres, 170 acres and just look at all the, just listen and just look. There are people that have never done that and will never do that in their entire lives. And that's not lost on our family. So that's gratifying to me, is just to be able to experience what we are able to experience. Shop wise, for me, the most gratifying feeling is when I have really put a lot of time into a fish or a deer or whatever it may be. And I've really been passionate about that, and when the customer gets it, they are overwhelmed with excitement or joy or happiness, and it takes them back to that memory and that time. That for me is gratifying. Or when they say it looks even better than it did in the pictures, and happy customers in turn keep me here, able to work from Blockton, Iowa, and do stuff for people everywhere else. So I'm just very lucky to be able to live and work in a time where I can remain self-employed and be able to provide for my family and still be able to go out and take my boys hunting or fishing or whatever the case may be, or just go collect sticks and rocks and whoever knows what else. So
I can understand that. It's interesting that you put it like that, because when people come pick things up, usually, unless they're really fantastic poker players, their faces don't lie. When they come and pick something up and they're pleased with it, or it's exceeded their expectations, that becomes very obvious, and that is gratifying. You know what I mean? It really does help. So I don't know.
That's the one downside to being I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I just one thing about doing stuff for people all over is I don't get to see their facial expressions when they get to open it. A lot of times I do get sent videos on occasion of people opening things, but it's the calls, it's the messages, it's I love that follow-up touch base with the customer and that satisfaction.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, so I didn't touch on it early when I probably should have, but you have won an award or two, haven't you?
I have a few, yeah.
All right. Tell us what is that like? I mean, most of the people that are going to watch this have got mounts or they have got different things done, and they have been involved in taxidermy. But unless they're going to the Deer Classic, and a lot of these people will be, but unless they're going to the Deer Classic, or maybe they've obviously been to, the Bass Pros, the Shields, the Cabela's, those kinds of things, some of the smaller shops, they don't have an understanding of what this stuff really is, and the fact that there are tremendous competition out there in order to win awards and to be placed at the top. So what's that like?
Yeah, so typically most states have an association, and within those those states and associations are like competitions. So typically there's one place in the state that has their, say, the Iowa State taxidermy competition, and so on for most states. But any state can join and can compete. So typically, like for the Iowa show, you'll get people from like Nebraska and maybe Wisconsin, Minnesota, just the bordering states. And every once in a while you'll get people come in from from long distances, but it's literally, people's best of their best, and there's different divisions. There's masters, which is the highest division you can compete in, and then professional, which is the normal operating as a business professional taxidermist. And then there's like amateur, and then youth and things like that. And it's broken down in divisions, fish, birds, reptiles, so on and so forth. But I've been lucky enough, I've been able to compete all across the country at different shows, different states over a very long span. I've been doing this 20 years. Even though I'm only 38, I started when I was 18. It's been a cool ride to take. But yeah, I would travel all over the place and attend several shows, and sometimes I'd take my licks, and sometimes, I'd do the kicking. But yeah, that's been gratifying for me, and be able to meet people from all over the world, especially at the World Show. You get to meet people literally from all over the world. But now I judge a lot, which is nice. Like I judged 3 shows this year. I think I judged 4 or 5 last year. So I actually get to be the judge instead of, the competitor. So that's been nice to be on the other side of the coin, and I get to travel and do the same thing. So it's just competition it's awesome, and I love doing it because I put my whole focus into one piece, or pieces if I'm doing it, and I let my artistic freedom fly. And the downside is it's an all-consuming thing for me, so I have to tread carefully.
Yeah, you would think that you would approach taxidermy the way that Michael Jordan approached basketball, but it's the same.
It's a strange deal for the people at a higher level. I don't know how some people do it. Some of the stuff you see at some of these shows, if I had 1 million hours, I don't think I could do it, and it's just, that's, some people, that's their whole life, is just strictly doing, those competitions. And it's really neat to see how beautiful people can present nature.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's lost on a lot of people, but I have seen things that were done that on some particular firearms from time to time, and I tried to imagine in my mind what kind of setup on a mill would be necessary in order to achieve this outcome, with these exceedingly weird angles and things that were almost impossible to get any tooling to. And everybody looks at it, oh, that's cool, and they walk on down the line. I'm like, no, dude. This guy worked. This guy put in effort. He made his own tools in order to be able to achieve that. I mean, this is big. And some people are like, whatever. It's not lost on me. So I get that.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
All right. Tell us how people, before we go, tell us how people can get a hold of Lawrence Taxidermy and where they need to see your stuff.
So I'm pretty active on Instagram, Lawrence Taxidermy Studio. I also have a Facebook business page, Lawrence Taxidermy Studio on Facebook as well. Other than that, I'm located, in Southwest Iowa here, just outside of Blockton, but social media is the pretty predominant way to do it. So.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
Any words of wisdom for the Second Amendment crowd out there before we go, or any shout outs?
I really appreciate living in a place where my boys and I can do the things that we do, and I hope that doesn't change. I get nervous about a lot of things, but for right now, I'm very happy that we're able to do what we can do.
I agree. It requires engagement. We have a lot of guests that say something similar, and you know how this is. I mean, you're a dad. You're looking forward to other things for other people. Now, it's not the same as when you were by yourself.
That's right.
So it really makes a difference when you teach people engagement, and then you pass on those passions. And a lot of that comes with Uncle Sam keeping his fingers out of your stuff, and you're respecting the laws that are there. And then, of course, like anything, we're an advocacy group. I mean, that's what IFC does. We obey the laws, but there are a lot of them that we want to change because they're wrong or they're onerous. So that's part of the gig too. So we encourage engagement. That's the way it is. All right. Well, Jimmy Lawrence from Lawrence Taxidermy, thank you for coming on today. I appreciate it. We're going to get this produced and out so everybody can see it in the evening. And so it's Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Tell your family and friends. And if there's something that they need, contact Jimmy. And as we've established, he can be persuaded in some cases. So
I sure can. Thank you very much for having me, Michael.
Thank you. See ya.
See ya.